Welcome to the Charleston Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the Charleston AMA and broadcasting from our friends at Charleston Media Solutions Studios. Thanks to our awesome sponsors at CMS, we get to chat with the cool folks making waves in Charleston. From business and art to hospitality and tech, these movers and shakers choose to call the Lowcountry home. They live here, work here, and make a difference here. So what's their story? Let's find out together.
Hey guys, welcome to the Charleston Marketing Podcast, powered by the Charleston American Marketing Association. We're coming to you from the Charleston Media Solutions studio. Massive thanks to them for supporting CAMA and our show. We also give a big shout out to the South Carolina Research Authority for their annual sponsorship, plus King and Columbus's for jumping on with us in Q1. That's very cool. And a shout out to the Mr. Jerry's Feel Good for the beats at the front of the show. Hey guys, what's up? Stephanie here, Stephanie Barrow of Stephanie Barrow Consulting. I am excited to be here with my friend Tom.
Hey there.
What's going on, Tom? Who do we have in the house tonight?
We've got Elliott Friedman today. You might recall that we had Tyler Friedman as a guest a few weeks ago.
Yes.
The tour guide from Walk and Talk Charleston. Well, Elliott has joined us. He's the other half of that power couple. Let me read your bio. This is impressive.
This is impressive bio.
Absolutely. Elliott is a Charleston-based business and technology advisor providing holistic advisory support to professional service firms, private equity sponsors, and founders, navigating growth, complexity, and critical inflection points. His work centers on helping leaders make sound decisions across business structure, technology, and execution, particularly where risk, regulation, and long-term value intersect. Across his career, he has held executive leadership roles spanning technology, operations, and digital strategy. He's co-founded a media production company that was acquired in 2014. He later led technology initiatives for growing private equity medical practice or private medical practice, and most recently served as co-founder and chief technology officer of an education technology company through its successful acquisition in 2024. He works with private equity sponsors to assist with risk, scalability, and post-acquisition execution. He works with entrepreneurs and founder-led teams to provide them with guidance. He wrote the book, The Holistic Edge, a private capital guide for founders and their professional advisors. And he's married to the fabulous Tyler Page Wright Friedman from Walk and Talk Charleston, as I mentioned, a former guest here on the Charleston Marketing Podcast. Elliott, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Tom, that was a mouthful.
What an intro.
You got a lot going on, sir.
Well, it leads me to believe I just need to do some more editing. And make sure
No, that was impressive.
There's not a lot of fat on that either,
No.
though. So that's great.
Well, thank you.
Love to hear your origin story. Where you're from, where'd you study, what led you to Charleston, or if you're from here.
Not from here originally. I'm from what I affectionately call the 6th borough of New York City, Boca Raton, Florida.
I'm familiar.
So I grew up there, and we moved as a family, my dad, mom, brother, and I, to a small town of about 7,000 people in rural Kentucky called Paris, Kentucky. Not to be confused with the other Paris, of course.
Very different place.
Very different place.
Yeah. Very different.
But, a lot of homage to the revolutionary efforts that the French helped us out with. So most of central Kentucky is named after a lot of different French names. So Paris, Kentucky is in Bourbon County, named after the Bourbon royal family. It's next to Lexington, Kentucky, which is in Fayette County after the Marquis de Lafayette.
Sure.
And we've got, we call it Versailles, but Versailles.
Kentucky.
Of course you do.
And then, went to middle school and high school there, and had to get the hell out of a small town as a snot-nosed dirtbag teenager. Wanted to go somewhere more substantial, and ended up at the College of Charleston chasing a jazz performance dream, because I was a saxophone player.
Wow.
Not part of my professional CV anymore, at least. That's what I was
going
doing.
to say, do you still play?
I haven't touched a saxophone meaningfully in 10 years.
Okay.
It's something I played a lot. I studied with, I think, one of the greatest jazz faculties outside of Berkeley here at the College of Charleston. Quentin Baxter was my advisor and a dear mentor for a long time. And, of course, Robert Lewis and the late Tommy Gill, Frank Duvall, all those guys. And so, but I was a dual major, jazz performance and pre-med, so I'm a med school reject. Too stupid to get into medical school, so my backup plan was computers and healthcare informatics.
We're glad that worked out for you. It probably wasn't so comfortable at the time.
Best thing that never happened to me, for sure. Yeah.
When I started researching you and I went to your website, Holistic Business Advisor. That is very cool. It's, one of our guests years ago said the riches were in the niches. And I think that.
Oh, you know Thomas Heath.
I do know Thomas Heath. Yes, that is Thomas Heath. He should probably have that on his tombstone. That's what I know him by. So that is quite a title. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my current, advisory offerings are kind of a rebirth of a consulting work that I did between. I was an IT director for a vascular surgical practice here in Charleston, and then went out on my own and hung my own shingle as an IT consultant for small professional services and medical practices. And then I met my former partners with the ed tech company, startup that we did, and so that was 7 years of heads down, grind it out, bootstrap, raise a little bit of angel money, figure out how to scale, survive COVID, and then entertained an unsolicited offer for our eventual acquisition about 2 years ago now.
What a blessing!
Yeah, it was. Look, I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate to have had 2 opportunities to sell the companies that I had helped build, and so since then I had to kind of relaunch with an idea and a branding around that. So I like the word holistic because especially in tech, you have way more than just the stuff that runs on electricity running the business, and so I had spent a lot of time with high growth companies between my startups or in the medical space, and so the idea was like, we have to make sure that every decision we make on one side of the business, we understand how it affects downstream or upstream. And so that's that holistic approach, is that no business is just a bunch of different isolated silos. It's everything working in harmony. And so I use holistic business advisor as the umbrella term, but below that, like you mentioned, I do work with professional service firms as a fractional CTO or CIO or chief security officer for their compliance. And then in the private equity world, I work as a tech advisor helping private equity firms kind of build the value in those companies that they're looking to sell eventually, which is their whole shtick. So the holistic is the umbrella term, and then it kind of trickles down into my my tech advisory.
That's great. So when you're looking at a company, how can you tell whether they're doing all right or they're headed for trouble?
Couple of things are dead giveaways. So unfortunately, I work in the red flag business, and so whether it's due diligence,
I did that for a while.
Identifying red flags and figuring out how to turn them green. First depends on the company, but we always look at what is the leadership doing. Are they embracing? Obviously I'm tech biased. Are they embracing leading edge tech solutions to enhance what they're doing for their ultimate deliverable? So are they a B2B business, and then are they leveraging? Like today, everybody's using AI, and we're also making sure are they wrapping things around in a good cybersecurity envelope too, because you have to protect your company, your investment from all of the evolving threats that we have. But the more direct answer to the question is how are they using tech? Are they using tech as an unfortunate expense line item for them? Are they embracing tech? Are they using too much of it? So a lot of the work I do is decreasing SaaS bloat. So software as a service bloat, where you have 10 different platforms that all do the same thing, but you're paying those licenses anyway.
So it's kind of like the streaming services apps where they just get rid of all that. Love it.
Exactly. So,
cool.
Looking to see are they using the technology efficiently? Is the technology touching all of the company? Does the operator understand the technology? It's one thing to say, and I'll give a big shout out to Stanfield Gray, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago.
I love Stanfield.
And so he uses that ask who, not how.
Yes.
And so if I don't hear operators asking who, not how, then I realize that they're trying to do it all themselves. And there's a lot that you can do on your own, especially from the tech side. And I do have clients that like to kind of be the first decision maker on their tech, and then they come to me when it doesn't work or they can't figure it out or whatever. But I want to know, is the operator willing? Are they coachable? Are they willing to see, the bigger picture, that holistic lens? And it's not always about revenue, because you can be making plenty of money and scaling, but if there's a lot of room for improvement and you're not aware of it, then I think, it's a little bit of a red flag where you don't realize that you have a ton of baggage. We call it tech debt that you're dragging along with your company. So those are kind of the filters I look at.
So what is the process? If someone brings you on board and they come into their business, do you meet with all the employees? What does the process look like?
I mostly work day to day with really small operations, and in the professional services, and those are attorneys, CPAs, medical physician or practitioner-owned companies. So the teams are relatively small, and that's both a great and a bad thing, because everybody wears a 50 different hats.
Sure.
And so, and I had that same experience, in the private medical practice where, I joined a team of about 13 people, and we ended up growing to over 50 people and then expanding throughout the state. But because I was dealing with IT, kind of if it was powered by electricity, it became my problem. So I had to also wear the hat of a lot of the digital marketing, and I'd had this media production background, and we were doing, short form videos.
Love that.
So working with operators and their teams, and I come in when people are just launching. That's why I like to work with founders. That's why I like to work with a professional service person like a CPA or an attorney leaving their law firm that they've been working for and starting their own law firm. That's an ideal opportunity for me to come in because I can help build everything from the ground up that's going to support them. We're going to find the technology that matches their the way that they practice law or CPA or medicine. We're going to help get their team trained up on how to use the technology effectively. That way you're not wasting license dollars every month or finding yourself I can't use any of the tech because it's all too hard or too challenging. Yeah,
that seems cleaner rather than dismantling something that is kind of working but a little bloated, to use your term, while keeping everything running. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Now, on the private equity side, I work with a larger private equity advisory firm called IT Ally, and we're nationwide. We work with private equity, predominantly in the lower middle market. So private equity buying companies that are typically only $3 to $10 million in EBITDA, which is kind of that that special formula for seeing how their income actually works, excluding some of these extraneous factors. But when we come in, we're doing due diligence on the companies that they're looking to buy. So I do a lot of reverse engineering too, and that's fun for me because it's a little bit more challenging. It's easier to start with a clean slate and build a tech system that works from scratch. But when you come in, it gives you the opportunity to identify these what we call value creation opportunities. So a company using legacy software or legacy systems, it's working for them. They're making money. Obviously, they're good enough for private equity to take a look at them to buy them for millions of dollars.
Sure.
But our job is to come in and say, okay, well, maybe they're not at market expectations. They don't have a plan for AI. They don't have a plan for cybersecurity. They're not, using modern systems that would be working far, faster and more efficiently for them. So that's the value that we can kind of come in and create. So, I do the reverse engineering as well. It is a lot more difficult, but it's a lot more rewarding because on the other side of that, you've got teams that are now more agile. You've got companies that are far more valuable. I mean, that's the goal. Take a company that was worth X dollars the day that our private equity buys it, sell it for 6 times that 5 years later. And tech is a big part of that.
So when you're coming in with these recommendations, are you also coming in with training people how to use the systems? Okay.
Yeah, so in each engagement's different. We always, tip of the spear is doing the diligence. So that's a single deliverable. We look at a prospective company, write up the diligence report, turn it over to the operating partners at the firm level for private equity, or for, in the professional services world, when you want all the things you need to start your firm. You're a lawyer. You need, obviously, cybersecurity. You want to be compliant. Compliance is the world that I live in deeply. So whether it's, the Bar Association or HIPAA or the IRS or the SEC, these are all very heavy compliant organizations that force the use of certain technology and force the safe use of that technology. I just gave a talk to the South Carolina Association of CPAs this week on ethical AI use for a CPA.
Love that.
And it's challenging because there's a lot of CPAs dumping their client financial data into ChatGPT.
Wow. That's terrifying.
And it is terrifying. And a lot of people are using, because we know that the technology is helpful, but we have to use it safely and securely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there are creative ways now to use the technology at the same level, but you have to be using the enterprise version. And you want to make sure that you're wrapping it in some sort of firewall between the database that you're dumping into these systems, so they don't touch the internet, they don't feed the models, so there's no additional training done. There's a lot of, I like to say AI is mostly A and very little I, because it can't do judgment. And that's when I work with these professionals, that's what they're getting paid the big bucks for, is their judgment. So you can find a lot of people to crunch numbers with calculators and look at spreadsheets and all that, but it's that ultimate judgment a professional delivers. So I try to support that judgment. And AI can help a professional learn more by doing a lot of research for them. I should say they should, by doing a lot of research on which sources that the professional should seek out. And then, communications, streamlining emails, those are all wonderful things to use AI for. But, if you're plugging a tax return in and asking if this is the right deduction amount and all that, AI is going to lie to you. And AI doesn't know it's lying to you.
It's going to come up with an answer no matter what.
It has to.
It might not be the right answer, but
yeah, I like to think of it like when you take a multiple choice test, there's 5 answers to each question. If you don't guess, you're guaranteed to get a 0 for that question. But if you guess, you have a 20% chance of just randomly picking the correct answer.
Oh, that's
so when AI trains, it's rewarded for at least guessing and not saying I don't know, because I don't know is a 0.
Right.
And they have a 1 in 5 chance in that scenario to get the right answer. So they're going to put an answer in front of you, and they're going to sound authoritative, and they're going to reference sometimes fake sources for where they got that information. So it takes a lot of a lot of diligence if you're using AI to make sure that the information you're getting is good. Tyler and I play this game often because she's a historian, and she's got a lot of deep knowledge about history. She spends a lot of time researching, and so we'll play the game. We'll ask an LLM, why is the pirate house on Church Street called the Pirate House? And it will give you this beautiful story. And none of it is true.
That's
man.
wild.
And she will go, AI is so crappy. I'm like, it has its downfalls for sure. So.
She's like, I am not a believer.
Yeah.
She's not a believer, and that's fine. And so I try to bridge that gap. So she would be like an ideal client.
Yeah.
She is my ideal client. And so, I've helped her in many ways. I use a lot of AI in building. So I can, essentially they call it vibe coding, but I can essentially direct AI to build custom applications. I do that for a lot of my clients.
Yeah.
And
you
this
did that for the AMA as well, right?
Oh, yeah. So this was a fun project.
AMA?
Yeah. So I serve on a couple of different boards and committees, and one of them is a sponsorship committee. And so the abbreviated version of the story is Tyler and I were flying back from Mexico City a few weeks ago at a wedding, and I'm working with a couple members on the sponsorship team, and we weren't using a CRM, like a proper piece of software to manage all the contacts. Who have we asked for money? Who we need to talk to, and all that. And so the big players out there, HubSpot and Salesforce and all that, they're feature rich, they're cumbersome, they're kind of ugly. No offense to them, but they're not particularly easy to use.
Sure.
And they cost money and all of these things. So we're getting on the plane, flying back to Charlotte, and I set up a little virtual private server on my hosting account where I have some website stuff hosted, and I connect my phone to through an SSH terminal to the server, and I install Cloud Code. So I get on the plane, and for 3.5 hours on the plane, connected to airplane Wi-Fi, I'm texting what I want this CRM or this sponsorship management software to be able to do.
Okay.
We land in Charlotte. I open the laptop, and for the first time, I look at what Claude has built me, and it's this beautiful application with all these great rich features. So it's tracking how you track sponsorship leads. So it has an AI tool in it. You can chat with the data that you have. You can tell it to create Mike Compton as a marketing specialist in my contacts list, and it will automatically do it. You don't have to click new contact, first name Mike, last name Compton.
Wonderful.
And then I hooked it up to my email, so it polls my email for specific code words. So I use the word sponsorship or deal or progress or anything like that, and it brings those emails in. I can attach those to contacts or attach those to deals in the pipeline for sponsorship asks. So I showed Mike. He says, this is great. I said, okay, great. I'll make one for AMA. So I reskinned it, white labeled it, all the AMA colors. And
That was very
and all
kind
that. It was
of
kind of
you.
fun.
Thank you for
Yeah.
doing
Well,
that.
these
super
are
kind.
fun things because sponsorships are important. And when you go to a big CRM like that, like HubSpot or Salesforce, for example, they have those features, but they're wrapped in 10,000 other features. And, you got to do 50 clicks to get to just the little piece of it that you want to use. So I said, well, we'll just do one specifically. And then that's evolved now into a deal management thing. And I'm using it for my own deals right now. So when I'm meeting with new clients and prospectives, I can track where I am in the conversation, and all my emails are attached appropriately. These are all features that exist in other platforms. I just make it so it's really tight, so I can only see what the information I need to see.
Right.
And that gives me the unlimited customization. And then the AI component is, being able to chat with, when was the last time I talked to, so-and-so, and it can tell me just by responding in a clean chat, according to our database, you haven't talked to them in 8 days. They have an email unrequited. Exactly. So
yeah. So speaking of marketing through the Marketing Association, obviously, most of our listeners are marketers themselves. So from your perspective, where do marketing teams most often get disconnected from the broader business strategy?
Yeah, it's a huge question.
it's a great question. From my perspective, because I mostly manage the software side of things, there are some really important gaps in how the data goes from on the marketing side, for example. So whether it's a broad cold campaign where you're trying to seek customers for a client, and that usually should convert to a sales conversation, right? So let's use higher ed for an example. So if the College of Charleston wants to recruit more students, they're going to have a marketing campaign that reaches out to all of their, target demo, which is going to be high school juniors and seniors. And so they're going to find them on social media. They're going to find them in with marketing efforts in certain social situations like IRL, in real life.
Yeah.
And so So there's a little bit of a gap in interpreting the data on how that student got engaged and signed up for the newsletter or whatever the engagement terminus was, and when sales should start speaking. And a great example is guessing what the pain point for that student is. So is the student wants to come to the College of Charleston, but is it too far from home and you don't know if you're going to have the support that you would normally have at home?
Sure.
So there's data that we can look at from a tech side to understand before the student even tells us what their concerns are, and have the sales team preload that information so when they go to speak with the student, maybe it's not a sales team, as a recruiter, when they go to speak with the student, they can say, ahead of time, I know this is far from home, but we have all of these great student life programs. Maybe it's financial. You can lead with the financial aid stuff, knowing that that's what the student's pain point is going to be.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the exact term of it is, but in the sales ops and rev ops, life cycle, being able to interpret that data, quantify it, and move it along to the next person on the chain, to the sales team from a marketing perspective, it's interesting. So, what are marketing teams getting wrong? Maybe they don't realize that there's a better hub between their interface with sales, for example.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is marketers report an ROI on the, ad spends and all of the media purchases so that, the customer is happy with spending $1 million on a campaign. Well, I think there's more granular data that we can get access to that maybe you just don't know exist. And so my job in a lot of these cases is not just marketing. It could be anything from, clinical practitioners or financial advisors or whatever. There's data out there that we can start to aggregate and intelligently use that to, for lack of a better word, convince our clients that they need to repeat this campaign, or this was a successful campaign, even though there's perception that not enough business was generated from it or whatever. And so it's all incremental too. So now we look at big data sets. That's where AI really shines, is being able to aggregate data from big data sets. Campaign to campaign is great. But what if we looked at the last 50 campaigns and understand why some worked or why some didn't? Or did campaign 13 influence campaign 48 in a way we aren't seeing it because we're myopic in our vision? That's what the tech is there for. It's to look at the large data set, aggregate that data, and make a cohesive argument in support of doing another campaign, even though we've already spent $10 million trying to sell this company or whatever. So
I have a question. So say I'm using this for like a Google LSA ad or a Google PPC ad. So with Google PPC, you have 20, 30 different variations of things that are serving you. You pull the A/B analytics. You can see that this works, this doesn't, this demographic works. How would you go beyond that? Because I feel like Google does a pretty good job.
Google does a great job.
Yes.
They're the OG godfather.
I feel like they're better than
data
Meta.
Aggregation.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Meta can do sometimes a little bit different because Meta has a far more granular detail of your dossier. So Google watches everything you do on the internet, watches every website you go to. It has, if you use Gmail, which is my favorite mousetrap because it's one of the best email systems out there, but it's free. Well, why is it free? Because
You're the product.
You're the product, right? So in order for Google to be able to have this, 95% market share in internet advertising, they have to be able to aggregate a lot of this metadata around their users, and they happen to be the number one search engine. They happen to be the number one email engine. So with PPC specifically, pay-per-click has, your A/B testing is one thing, and impressions are an interesting number that get overlooked sometimes because it results in a pretty small number. So you're looking at your click rate. Click-through is only 3.5% on a major impression campaign. So millions of impressions, but only thousands of people click it, or hundreds of people.
Yes.
And so that feels like a loss. But the truth is we need to look at what's going on the impression side. Is that influencing somebody to think about this later? So now we have to look at a separate data set. So you mentioned Meta.
Yeah.
So what if you could take the Google data, so you know what your impressions were, and you can get any sort of demographic information for who got the impression. Then you can go to Meta and try to match those people that received their first point of contact in their Google pay-per-click campaign, Acme Company X, and they went to the back of their brain, but they didn't think about it. But then they got influenced by a Instagram advertisement. So if you can connect that dot, you can say, well, here we actually delivered a far more valuable ad campaign to you because it took the impression from the PPC campaign perhaps to drive this user to actually engage on the social media side.
Right.
Or even deeper, if it's an email campaign, the PPC that precedes that could be a great data set for you to say, okay, well then the recipients of this email campaign, and email campaigns are very expensive actually.
They are.
And so you really want to get the most bang for your buck. So maybe you should always do these broad spectrum PPC campaigns ahead of an email campaign, and it's a no-brainer to couple those together. So convincing the client that those ad dollars are helpful, even though there wasn't a direct corollary to millions of dollars in sales just from a PPC campaign. But you could say that this was the foundational, tip of the spear, and then we needed to get a little bit more granular because we don't really know how many impressions does it take to get somebody to actually engage?
Yeah, that's the hardest argument when I'm dealing with clients is about the branding aspect of it. Like, well, why do I get a billboard? How am I going to know if it's going to get an ROI? Same thing with radio. Like there's technology to support it, which is great. It sounds like you offer a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, every individual client's a different situation and whatnot. Talk about holistic lens to marketing. I had to learn 3 different times in my life that marketing is not sales, is not branding, is not PR, and is frankly not rev ops and sales ops. And so some operators, and especially on the small scale, which that's my clientele. So you have a professional like an attorney is a 1 attorney practice, 2 to 3 employees. That's their whole team. They have fractional fractional CIO. They have a fractional CFO or an accountant.
Sure.
They have fractional marketing and sales. But sometimes they think, well, I can buy my own Google pay-per-click, just put out, Acme attorney. We like it. We hate it when you crash, but we like to help you win afterwards or something like that. And so, they'll do this kind of blanket market, the spaghetti marketing, whatever. And then they don't realize that there's this whole other brain on PR. Well, you should be, writing op-eds to the newspaper, or you should be on a podcast, or you should be interviewed by Low Country Live or whatever. And then, the sales side of it is, sending the first point of contact. A lot of times it's your paralegal. Well, are they sales trained? Like they're actually taking the intake call. Yes, Mr. Friedman, I'm so sorry you're in a car accident. We would love to represent you. But where's the value prop? Why you and not the other 10,000 attorneys out there? So the sales brain is the separate part of it. So understanding that it's not all the same soup. It's just, different ingredients. And so I think that to me, I had to learn that in my own businesses. And I try to coach that with my clients because it doesn't take the one person to be sales, PR, marketing, and all that. You have to have kind of some different brains involved.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why consultants do so well because all of us specialize in our own specific thing. And unless you want to hire an agency that has 40 people that all specialize in their own things, it is best to go this route.
Great for that.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's neat.
The other side of the same coin, what's the difference between companies that are quote unquote doing marketing and ones that are actually growing? Like, how do you differentiate between those two? Because there's a lot of noise out there.
So there's this great archetype of the entrepreneur who goes around and brags, "I've never spent $1 on marketing." And you've heard this, right? Like I've never had to spend on marketing. I've been doing great so far in my career. Yeah. And I see this a lot in food and bev, ironically, where there's restaurants that have been around and they got great PR in the early days. Frankly, and no offense to them, but no credit to them because we happen to be here. Charleston's like the food mecca, right? So a new restaurant opens, every news outlet's going to go look for it, whether you've called them up and told them, hey, I'm open. They're just going to go check it out. So a little bit of PR, early traction, the word of mouth phenomenon. They never had to buy an advertisement. They never had to pay for a meta campaign on Instagram or Facebook. They haven't had to do TikTok advertising. They haven't hired influencers to mention their name in their posts. And they've never sent out an email campaign and they go, I don't need to because I'm so good that I don't need to do that. I think what they miss is that they're at their baseline and they're never going to grow from that.
Right.
And so if they were to invest in marketing, and first off, they probably couldn't handle the incoming volume. That's always the secondary problem is when you do marketing, you have to have that resilient core operation to be able to
Yeah.
handle the
Yes.
incoming thing. So scalability is a big question about, are you ready for marketing? My feedback to y'all would be, are you making sure that when you pitch a marketing campaign to one of your clients that they have the infrastructure to handle the deluge of incoming
Often they
things?
don't.
Right. And so, that's
They're not
why,
tracking their ROI.
exactly.
They're not using tracking numbers. Like, they're not using their call center or whoever is not asking the questions. Like, how did you hear about us? Something as simple as that for their CRMs. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I bet you stay very busy, sir.
I stay very busy. I'm always looking for new clients, but
There you go.
it's the door's open, and the idea is depending on the engagement situation for me specifically, with private equity, often it starts as a one-time engagement, and then the goal is to continue to work together for multiple acquisitions, multiple at the firm level to manage the portfolio companies from on top instead of inside. That tends to be helpful with my professional services clients, getting them set up from scratch. I have what I call my practice accelerator. It's a 9-week program, soup to nuts. You can from the first phone call we have, within those 9 weeks, you're collecting billables from your first client at least. And that's everything to get you up and running. But I do, try to hand off a lot of the post-implementation responsibilities. If I help, because I have some digital media background, if I help build your website, well, you got to find you a long-term web developer because
That's
my
good.
my billable
So you're
rate is
setting
not
them up for
reasonable. I set them
success.
up, yeah. So we got to, it's all about agility, speed, and getting to revenue as quickly as possible, and then establishing that team. So the team is really important. So I spend a lot of time networking. A lot of it so that I can find new clients, but it's a lot of it so I can learn who's in the ecosystem that I can really help and support. I'm an operating partner with Chucktown Startups, which is a really great up and coming
Excellent organization.
I was
Yeah,
going to
you
say,
know Toby?
I do.
Their podcast.
Oh, you went on
yeah.
the
Low
Country Revolutionary
Yeah.
podcast.
Oh,
Awesome.
that's
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been working with Toby since October last year, and we're looking to really do something a little bit different because there's a ton of entrepreneur support organizations that doesn't really fall where Chucktown is. So we offer a lot of opportunities for marketers, especially to participate in helping grow Chucktown startups, but B, plugging in their skill set to all of the up and coming startups and founder-led companies that we support. And so the idea is to enhance these ecosystems, not even that selfishly, but Tyler and I want to raise a family here. So I need the economy in Charleston to be far more resilient than a port, than a hospitality vertical or a manufacturing vertical, because we're one tariff away from one of those going away. We're one hurricane away from 5 years of no.
Don't you say that.
I'm just saying this is the. but here's the solution.
Right.
And by the way, we are one one dredge cycle away from these ships not being able to come into the port, and so God forbid. But instead of leaning on one or two large industries, I would love to see a very robust small business ecosystem where we are producing new companies every week. These companies become valuable. Private equity is buying them. Venture capital is getting returns on their investments. Angel investors are comfortable investing money here. Because the bigger we can grow the small businesses, the more resilient we are, because we have a much more diverse group of economic drivers instead of just those 3 or 4 big pillars.
Yeah.
We need them too. And a big props to the Charleston area, Charleston Regional Development Authority for they've spent a lot of time recruiting manufacturing. They have made a big pivot and are really supporting small business right now. The new leadership at the Metro Chamber of Commerce is doing an awesome job. I'm a mentor at the Harbor Entrepreneur Center, so Grady over there is doing a fantastic job. We have an accelerator right now where we're helping about 12 startups, go through all of their pain points and pitching in front of venture capital. But these are like essential pieces for a robust ecosystem. Charleston's grown so much, but I don't think we have as much of a safety net as I'm comfortable with. That's why I'm spending so much time and effort volunteering my time to help build it. And so that way we have a robust economy in the next 5 to 10 or 20 years, and we can enjoy the benefits of Boeing and Mercedes and Volvo and Bosch and Honeywell, and we can enjoy the port and the hospitality, but we're not reliant on them 100% for the viability of Charleston.
Yeah. So when a company is scaling successfully, any of these companies that you're working with, what systems or habits are usually in place behind the scenes?
It's a great question. It definitely depends on what the industry they're in. So my expertise is the tech side. Right now, scalability is very much tied to strategic and safe AI use. Is a great way to think about it. So again, we all play with these chatbots, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. They all serve an individual purpose, but AI goes far beyond that. You have agentic, procedures. So if anybody's worked with OpenClaw, which is the new trend in the last couple of weeks, which is an on-prem large language model that you install on a computer, and it can do a lot of tasks autonomously. We have agentic coding.
Can it wash my dishes?
We're getting there. Order your Optimus robot, and it'll do it.
Have you seen them? They are creepy looking.
Yeah, they are. They really are.
It's good marketing, though.
It is. It's great marketing.
Creepier the better, because we all talk about it. If it was really like normal look, it'd be like it's kind
if
of
it looked
boring.
like Rosie the robot. From
Exactly.
The
Well, that actually might be pretty cool.
That would be very cool.
That's what I've been looking for years.
Man.
Yeah, I love Rosie. But no, to answer your question, it's about scalability in today's era relies heavily on the tech. So are you spending too much money is always the first question. Do you have way too much software services that you're paying for? Can you consolidate that? Stop a little bit of your cash burn, allocate that to other resources, marketing, buys, sales, team support. And then what are you doing to be able to scale internally with your team to accommodate, the sales you're making? I just was reading about that wonderful artist that just passed away this week. I think her last name is Christian or Christensen. Her and her husband lived on a boat in Manhattan, and it's a story of scale gone wrong, where they scaled way too quickly with their pottery business. They're both sculptors, and they started a little pottery company. They making great money, and then all of a sudden they were making millions of dollars a year, had 200 full-time employees, and were taking on a lot of debt. And debt in a business isn't always a bad thing; it's leverage. But they, you hit one little bump in the road, and all of a sudden they, were too big to be able to maintain or to survive any kind of nuance in the growth, and the growth stalled, and they lost everything. And it's just one of those sad states. But you see this with a lot of companies that aren't scaling with the internal structure too. So the successful scalers are able to support the scale internally from an operations standpoint. And in my world, it's compliance. You can't scale without understanding how the scale is going to affect your ability to be compliant with the regulatory environment. And, this is the age-old question, more regulation, good or bad. It's a consumer safety thing. It's an environmental safety thing. But does it stymie growth and scale? In some cases, the argument can be made yes. But on the other side, the benefits far outweigh the downside. So there are people that exist like me that spend a lot of time in the regulatory space, making sure the scale can be supported with regulatory compliance. It's really challenging.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's exciting. So how does someone really get a hold of you? Just how are you getting your clients?
I'm getting my clients by word of mouth. Unfortunately, this is a bad podcast for me on, because I've spent a lot of money on marketing. I've never gotten any direct clients from that, but I do know that it helps lay the groundwork. So I can be found on LinkedIn, Elliott T. Friedman. I'm getting ready to put some more effort into my Instagram, professional Instagram profile, which is Holistic Biz Advisor. And so then my website is holisticbizadvisor.com. I have a newsletter. It's private equity driven. It's called Tech Alpha, where I write a weekly newsletter, 3 to 5 minute read about how, what we're seeing from the field, like case studies from how tech is improving enterprise value. I do a lot of teaching. You'll find me at a lot of networking events. This podcast is a great place to
This is
come
a great
in contact
place.
with. I love being here with you guys.
So people will find you through these different outlets.
Yeah.
And typically, if they start working with you, how long will you work with these companies, do you think? Like 6 months?
Yeah, so I actually work off of an hourly retainer. Of all things, it's the least scalable version of, and so it's the cobbler's children have no shoes. So, but what it does is it allows me to quantify work. And so one of the great benefits, especially because I'm doing a lot of micro app building, is instead of going to a development group, which they exist for a very specific purpose, and that's generally large-scale things. But for bespoke development, an individual full-stack developer or somebody like me who has access to AI agentic coding, but somebody who also has the experience of how to build the appropriate framework behind it, debug it appropriately, knows the actual coding language to be able to get in there and fix any of the issues. I'm able to deliver those at just the time it takes me plus Claude to do it, for example.
That's nice.
So I'm not charging a giant premium. It's just if it takes me 3 hours to build, 5 hours to debug, and another couple hours to train, then that's what you pay for it. It's not this, 6-figure, 6-month engagement.
Yeah.
Although
Wow.
maybe it should be. I could be
Maybe
making
it
a lot
should
more
be.
money like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Right.
I
We
feel like a
need to help you
marketer
scale.
should bring you on from the beginning as part of their own strategy.
That would be great. Yeah. I love supporting marketing. I love supporting all of the other verticals. I really love supporting the fractional CFO because they live in the data, the spreadsheets and all of that. And the more visibility I can give them, the better they can do with creative tax solutions, with proper revenue forecasting. These are really important things that companies sometimes overlook. That goes back to our previous conversation on scaling. If you're not able to forecast revenue accurately, you're not going to know where your next dollar comes from. How recurrent is the revenue? We didn't talk about it here. I'd love to come back and talk about how to ask investors for money because that's a whole different strategy. And there's a ton of sales and marketing involved in that between pitch decks and 30-second pitches and all that. So
I was just going through that world with nonprofits asking for money. That's tough.
Tough. One last question for you, a little bit of advice. So imagine you've got a business leader listening to this podcast and they're feeling stuck.
Yeah.
The growth has plateaued. The team has been stretched thin. What's the first step they should take tomorrow morning?
Consider a different revenue line for whatever product or service you're selling.
Okay.
And I'll give you a quick example. So if you're selling an application or a service, let's say it's let's say you do junk removal, and I'm going to reference some dear friends from the Harbor Club. So if you're doing junk removal and they're doing really well, but let's say they stalled out. Well, what else can you be doing that involves trucks and heavy lifting, and you have a team in place? Well, what if you started also selling moving people from one place to the other? So not just throwing away trash. So look at your infrastructure. Look at what you have. How can you have a second or third or fourth revenue stream that isn't obvious to you? And can you do something very inexpensively to change what you're doing to level up and bring in that second line of revenue, and then maybe use those dollars to reinvest in what your primary thing is and increase your marketing or whatever.
That's a good way to
love this.
I love it. That's a great way to look at it.
Love it. Awesome.
Well, Elliott, it's been a pleasure having you.
Likewise.
It's I've learned a lot, and I'm definitely going to send people your way because
Likewise too. Yeah, we'll get connected after this.
Oh, I love that. I loved it. Do you have any more questions for our boy Elliott today?
I'm good. I've learned a lot as well.
I
Elliott,
feel like
thank you
my
so
mind
much.
is blown a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you do to relax?
Yeah.
This goes back to when online dating was a thing. Tyler and I met on Hinge, and so you put in like, what are your top 3 most recreation activities? I love listening to jazz, being a former jazz musician.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really love the outdoors. I built a big overland truck that I do overlanding with, which is just like 4x4 long distance epic traveling.
How cool.
I
I
do
love
that.
those
Yeah, being
trucks.
disconnected.
Yeah.
Ironic, I'm a tech guy, but I like to disconnect and go off the grid. And then I love stand-up comedy. I love to laugh.
I love it.
Are you a Wits End fan?
Well, I like the Wits End. I did open mic stand up here in Charleston before the pandemic, but I don't have the chutzpah to get back on stage and get loud.
Oh,
We got to get you
You'll
back
have
out
to
there.
you'll have to let us know next
Yeah,
time.
please do. Elliott Friedman, thank you so much. Stephanie, what a pleasure.
Yes, it's always been fun. We're getting ready to go to the Spark Awards tonight. This will be airing after that, but I'm excited to see you tonight at Tom's Spark
I
Awards.
can't wait for the yellow dress.
Yes, it's going to be there. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
All right, bye.
Bye.